everyone. My name is Francesca, and you are watching the inaugural production of Spark Live from Salmon Public Library. Due to caution related to the coronavirus, our library is currently closed, so we will be bringing you our regularly scheduled STEM programming on Fridays at 1 p.m. right here on Facebook Live. So thank you so much for tuning in. Today we're going to be exploring some ancient architectural and building styles and doing a few activities to see how those different styles worked. So if you want to follow along and try these activities out, you'll probably want to have a few materials gathered for yourself. First of all, you're going to need a pair of scissors. It's not required, but a ruler and a pencil might help you out if you want to be a perfectionist about this. I'm going to do that. You're going to need a paper towel tube. If you don't have one of these on hand, 2 or 3 toilet paper tubes will do you just fine. And you're going to want to have some blocks or Legos on hand, or maybe a combination of them if you want to try a few different things here. And then for the challenge that I'm going to leave you with at the end, you're going to want to have frozen some ice cubes in a standard ice tray. So hopefully anything with a trapezoidal cube shape should do. So that's what we're going to need today. So like I mentioned, we're going to be talking about architectural styles. So if you've ever probably built something with blocks in your life, which I'm guessing a lot of you have, and you were trying to make a doorway, you'd probably build something like I have set up right here. 2 posts and a beam going across the top. What you might not know is that every time you were building something like this, you were actually demonstrating a form of building that was very popular back in ancient times, known as the post and lintel system. Post and lintel. So this is actually named for the 2 different components that are present in this building system. And those are the posts, which are our vertical pieces here, and the lintels. A lot of times these are also known as beams, and that might be a word that you're more familiar with. So these work very well because the post, or the lintel rather, distributes the weight of something on top of it through the beam and then down through the posts, and we're able to support a lot more weight on top of this. So one of the earliest examples of the post and lintel building system that we have access to is this monument right here. You might have heard of it. This is Stonehenge. So we can see in this photo that we have our vertical posts, which are made of stone slabs, and then we have horizontal stone slabs going across the top. So those would be our lintels or our beams. And this system was very popular in a variety of different ancient societies for a long time. Like I said, many of you have probably built something like this. You might not have known how strong a system like this actually is. So if you want to prove it to yourself, we can do a quick experiment here. Again, if you've got your wooden blocks, or if you've got Legos, the big ones, the Duplos will work just fine if you want to build something like this. Or I'm actually going to use the smaller Legos I have here just to really show you how strong these things really are. So you can build with your Legos 2 posts. And I'm using the Legos that are 4 units wide by 2. Those are the ones I had the most success with. So I'm going to build 2 posts that are each 4 Legos high with my 4 by 2 Legos. So here are my 2 posts. And then my lintel, my beam, I'm going to make out of 2 of the longer Lego pieces. So each of these ones are 2 by 6. You can probably use a longer one if you have one around. You don't have to do it exactly like me. I'm just going to attach those at the top here. So now I have my posts and my lintels, and I've created a little platform. Now, who thinks this platform is strong enough to hold up my weight? Should we find out? I'm going to put this on the ground, and I'm going to attempt to balance on my post and lintel here. Might have to work on my balance a little bit, but this is good. So if you want to try that, you can go ahead and build yourself a little post and lintel platform and see if you can stand on it. Now, as good as these systems are, they do have limitations. One of them being that, you know, if we look back at our picture of Stonehenge, they require a lot of posts. So you couldn't really make things much wider than a doorway to hold things up without using a lot of material. So that was a limitation in building for a long time. It limited the size of things that we could create until a new building system came along, which looks something like this. You may know the name of this. This is called an arch. So there's a lot of different types of arches out there. We're going to be looking at the basic true arch here. So the arch, early versions of the arch appeared in a lot of different ancient societies around the world. But we often, when looking at the history of the arch, think a lot about the Roman Empire, because the Roman Empire, engineers in the Roman Empire are really the ones who figured out how to use these in a lot of different kinds of structures above ground. People were using arches and tunnels before, but the Romans started using them to make aqueducts and bridges and other public utilities. So this is an example of one of our more famous Roman aqueducts that uses an arch construction. And you can see that this is a pretty large structure. So the arch allowed them to make things much bigger that lasted longer with less materials because of the unique strength of the arch. So to demonstrate how strong an arch really is, we're going to use something that's relatively flimsy, right? This tube. And we're going to see if we can build an arch out of it and put a little weight on it. So if you take your paper towel tube or your toilet paper tube, we're going to cut this up so that we can make some arch pieces. So what you're going to do is you're going to want to cut a piece out of this tube. So you'll cut a slit straight down the middle, all the way down the end of your tube. And you're going to try and keep your cut as straight as you can. This is where if you really want to use a ruler, you could. So once you have your slit, we obviously don't want our arch to be like that because it'll flop on us as a circle. So we're going to move over maybe about 1.5 inches and cut that whole strip out so that we're left with an arch. So I'm going over here and I'm going to cut another straight line up my tube. Try and keep it as straight as I can. So then I'm left here with a nice arch tunnel. So we've probably seen some tunnels like this. This is one example of an arch, and it's fairly strong. If I push down on it with my hand, it's starting to collapse outwards, but it's holding some of that pressure. What is really special about arches is if we start to put them next to each other like this, because you'll notice when I push down on this tube, where is it collapsing? What's happening to it? The walls on the outside are wanting to go away from each other, right? They're pushing outwards, and so it's actually flattening my arch. If we have a bunch of arches next to each other, that force of the two arches pushes into each other, and that can help them stay up. So we're going to take now our paper towel tube or our few toilet paper tubes and make several smaller arches. So this is where you might want to use your ruler if you have one. Go ahead and flatten this out a little bit, and I'm going to use my ruler and make a mark along the edges every 2 inches. My tube is about 11 inches long, so that's going to leave me with 5 pieces and a little extra that I just won't use. So I made my marks on this side, and then I'm going to flip it around and do the same thing on the other side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then you can take your ruler, and since you now have notches on both sides, you can draw lines between them so that we know that our cuts are going to be straight. And this one's going to be really important to have straight cuts, just because it's going to help the arches fit together nicely. If they're diagonal, then it might not work quite as well. So I'm drawing lines between my notches. So if you can see that now, you might have something like this with pencil lines marking where we need to cut. Then I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to cut out each of my mini arches. Didn't know you could have this much fun with paper towels, right? So now that I have each one of my miniature arches, I'm going to try and squeeze them a little bit to get some shape back into them since we've been flattening them out. And we can line them up next to each other, sort of make our own cardboard aqueduct here. And if I take something that's kind of heavyweight, maybe I'll grab a book since I'm in a library. All right, so I've got this book. And it's actually handling the weight okay. If I start to add some more weight, it collapses outwards. So this is something that ancient builders and people who build today have noticed happens, that yes, this is a lot stronger because these different arch pieces are pushing into each other, but they still want to go out on the outside. So we created something called an abutment. Show you that word here. And what an abutment does is it is a heavy structure on either side of the arch that provides support and keeps it from moving outwards when it wants to move outwards. So, there's different ways to do this support. Sometimes they use poles that go higher up. Those are called buttresses. So that's an abutment, like that. And so for me right now, I'm just going to take these two wooden blocks that I have and put them on the outsides of my arches and kind of push them in a little bit to create some pressure that keeps my arches from collapsing outward when they want to. And now, I don't know if this is strong enough to hold this, but so my abutment's not actually strong enough, but if I were to push on these, maybe if I were having an assistant help me push on my arches. Yay, everyone say hello to Jeff.
Hello, everybody.
All right, so I'm gonna push, and can you put my ice cube lunchbox down on here once we'll see if this works. We don't know, this is all an experiment, everyone. All right. So with me holding my abutments, which, you know, in real life, maybe we could screw these into the ground or use some heavier stone. These are just wooden children's blocks. The arch becomes strong enough to hold this lunchbox. And Jeff, would you say this lunchbox is pretty heavy?
It's pretty heavy. It
Yeah.
probably weighs a good 3 to 4 pounds, maybe.
Yeah. At least. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in here. There's 2 frozen water bottles and a box of ice. Which, speaking of ice, this is the challenge that I'm going to leave you with. And you know, feel free to explore different configurations you can do. If you happen to get one of those stronger tubes like drawing paper, you can really hold a lot of weight. You could probably create something to stand on if you cut something that's got a little bit more heft to it. So the last challenge I'm going to leave you with today, as I mentioned, you're going to need some ice. And the reason for that is I'm going to show you a couple of up-close pictures of some arches. So you can see the bricks at the top of these arches have a special shape. They're not shaped like rectangles. They're shaped more like another shape that we know. Maybe you know the name of it. This is a trapezoid. So back when they were making arches in ancient times, they would often just go out and find stones that had that trapezoidal prismic shape. But they could also make casts to make stones in that shape. We're lucky enough that we have a modern piece of tool, I guess, that makes trapezoidal bricks for us, and that's a standard ice cube tray. So I went ahead and I froze some ice ahead of time. And what we're going to try and do today is actually build a miniature archway out of only ice cubes that can support itself. So you'll want your ice, and you'll probably want 6 to 8 ice cubes depending on the taper of your cubes. They may vary. Mine have a pretty strong taper, so I don't need very many cubes. You're definitely going to want a towel for 2 reasons. One, we don't want to get water all over the place. I'm sure your parents won't appreciate that too much. And 2, the towel is actually going to help keep our base ice cubes stuck down so that they don't slide apart, right? Because ice is pretty slippery. So you want a towel. You don't want to fold it too thick because we want this to be relatively stable for something to sit on. And there's really several ways that you could try and do this. But what I'm going to do is try and set my ice cube arch up flat first so I can figure out, see, these are already sticking to the towel. So I can figure out about how far apart my base blocks need to be. So I'm going to try using 7 cubes. I tried earlier and I used 7. So you'll notice that, right, these are trapezoidal, so they have a bigger side and a smaller side. The bigger side is going to go on the outside because the outside curve is bigger than the inside curve. The real challenge here is, can you build your arch before your ice melts? So I've created an arch shape that's flat, right? And I can see about how far apart my base blocks need to be. So this is where the melting of the ice is actually going to help you a little bit, because if I take my wet side of the ice and sort of rub it into the towel, it'll stay there. And at this point, it's really helpful to have another person, especially because your hands will start to get cold, help you to assemble the arch. So I'm going to ask Jeff to come over here again and give me a hand and see if he can put up 1/2 of the arch while I hold these other pieces. See if we can do this. The last piece that holds everything together is often known as the keystone. If you hold everything there for a minute, the pieces will start to melt into each other. Oh, so close. Oh, we had it for a second. So that's your challenge today. See if you can create an arch that'll stay up longer than ours will. And let us know how it goes. If you really want to get creative with it, you could actually build it up on something higher so that you can see what it looks like. I'll show you a picture. Like that. So you could use some wooden blocks and put your ice like this.
And if you guys are successful at creating your ice arch, please take a photo and share it with us in the comments or something like that. We'd love to see if you're able to successfully create an ice cube archway.
Yeah, so thanks for tuning in, and good luck with your ice cube archways. We're looking forward to seeing all those photos.